Hello, this is Katie Baker, and today I'll be discussing African American representation in animated television shows. Throughout television history, numerous minority groups have been stereotyped and misrepresented to the masses. One of the largest groups of citizens to fall into this trend is the African American population. People of color are not only underrepresented, but usually when they are portrayed, they are seen in a negative and stereotypical way. In more recent years, animated television shows have increased in popularity, ranging in children's programming to adult animated comedies. The rising genre has led to an increase in minority representation, but it's debatable if this depiction is positive or negative. When creators of animated television started to diversify their medium, the most common way to represent these minority groups were to depict them through racism. As stated in animated representation of blackness, animation has historically fed on blackness, recycling caricatures such as Mammy Two Shoes in Tom and Jerry, and the Crows in Dumbo, and inspiring characters such as Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny, for instance. All of these iconic characters were fueled by stereotypes with racism sprawled throughout them. The overwhelming fact of reality is that these characters were accepted with no consideration because the consumers of the time saw no wrong in this. Anti-black racism was persistently reiterated for the pleasure of white audiences and the profit of largely white-owned corporations. Today, the molds that have once shaped the stereotypes behind characters in animation are trying to be diminished and reconstructed with more integrity. Although many animators have changed their ideas behind their characters, some still represent previous stereotypes. African Americans were and are still likely to be depicted by some stereotypes, including happy-go-lucky behavior, clownish, poor, buffoonish, and not having an established job. Another concerning stereotype is that people of color are depicted by violence and exaggerated major cultural differences. Two prime examples where you can still sporadically see these stereotypical depictions are in The Boondocks and Family Guy. The Boondocks show stereotypical qualities by having a majority of the show center around violence, and Family Guy includes Cleveland Brown, who is always happy-go-lucky. Both shows take a satirical spin on the issues they present, though, and resolve it with the characters growing and learning through their actions. On the other hand, a majority of the shows that do depict African Americans shine a light on these characters and break the molds that have previously been created. Some animated shows that break these barriers are The Proud Family, The Cleveland Show, and Fat Albert. The Proud Family and The Cleveland Show both center around stable African American families who are hardworking and shown to be like any other family, regardless of their race. This primarily breaks the stereotype that African Americans have substantial cultural differences than other races. Fat Albert also broke these molds by having an all-African American cast comprised of many different personalities. All of these characters were diverse and had their own ideas and opinions. The representation of African Americans, regardless of how they are portrayed, can have consequences though. With negative representation comes negative consequences. Such as described with the Boondocks, the show still highlights these stereotypical ideas of violence, which could send messages to viewers that African American individuals should or normally act in a violent manner. On the contrary, consequences could also be seen as positive, especially when focusing on the idea of family stability, like in The Proud Family and The Cleveland Show. The stability created within these animations showed the importance of togetherness and having others to depend on. Another result that can be seen from breaking the previous stereotypes is shown through Fat Albert. The inclusion of many different personalities, all from a cast of African Americans, showed the audience and other people of color that they didn't have to act a specific way to be accepted by others, and they could be true to themselves. Although people of color are shown in animated television now more than ever, there's still a lot of revision that needs to occur before this representation is equal. Even today, when African Americans are included, they occupy minor roles rather than major roles, particularly when compared to their Caucasian counterparts. Animated television needs to continue to create and diversify their shows with African Americans as their cast and characters to further break down and diminish the stereotypes that were created decades ago.